Hey, what's up? So today I'm very excited to bring to you guys a full spotlight video on this manga that I recently finished. This is the Mushroom Manga Masterpiece Selection. It's an anthology of manga one-shots that were compiled by author and editor Kotaro Izawa, who is the author of books like the complete collection of mushroom literature and Magical Mushroom Tour. So he previously had the idea of collecting a book of both literature and manga on mushrooms, but it sort of fell through in that he only firstly made the a separate collection of just mushroom literature. So I guess it was due to maybe logistics or anything like that. But luckily he was able to make this right here, its own separate volume just full of manga related to mushrooms. So this one is a very diverse anthology. We've got manga from a bunch of different time periods. We've got Kashihon from like Shirato Sanpei, we've got BL, we've got Doro Hedoro. There's so many things in this book, but the main thing that I guess this book was advertised to be is that it had a reprint of the UFO mushroom invasion story by Shirakawa Marina, and it has the entire story. So the only full-length story in this book is Marina's work. Everything else is a one-shot. It's either a one-shot taken from a continuing series or just a pure one-shot alone. So a lot of different things to go through today, but this was a very fun read and a very affordable book as well, considering the quality of it. I know it was reprinted in a revised edition. I believe this is the revised edition in 2018, but you've got a cover here that is gold and shiny. Here's what the inside looks like. Here's an illustration from UFO Mushroom Invasion. And inside here, all of the chapters have their own paper prints, color paper as well. So there's a lot of care and thought put into this. And what makes it even better is that at the end of every chapter, you have a little afterword by Izawa describing the actual story and the book it came from. So we'll just get into it. We'll start off with the first story. So here's like a little textured section. Also, I don't know why, but my zoom is not working today for my camera. I don't know. So it should be fine though, because the details can be seen from this angle alone. But yeah, we start off with a story by Tsuge Yoshiharu, and this is the mushroom hunting story. So if you have the swamp in English, you'll be able to read this. So this was reprinted here. I feel like I have gone through the story in the past before, but essentially it's about a boy here who spots this sort of rain section that is happening in the mountains. And this story was actually inspired by a time that Yoshiharu went mushroom hunting with Shirato Sanpei, and they saw a sun shower that looks like rain falling on a part of a mountain. So yeah, you'll be able to find this in the Swamp collection, and we've got a little afterword here. Whoops. It actually comes from where Izawa took it from, was from the Nejishiki collection in Japanese. So that was the first story, a pretty cool one to start off with. Next, we have a story that is titled Mushroom Conference by Kuniko Nagasaki from the Ebony and Irony short comic collection. So in terms of who Kuniko Nagasaki is, I do actually have a manga by her over here. This is Catnappers, and it's a collection of 11 cat comic stories with art by Kuniko Nagasaki. And I believe she only has one work here where she's written, because it's her manga adaptation of other cat short stories. So just to give an example of what that looks like, I read this a long time ago, but here's the inside of it. So yeah, much like the Mushroom Anthology, it's a collection of stories focused on one subject, that being cats, and all of the art is done by her. So, same thing in here. This story, Mushroom Conference, it's a manga about a sort of, it's like a UN meeting pretty much, but instead of people, it's mushrooms. They're pretty much just discussing their use to humans. There's also different factions of mushrooms, where you've got like the poisonous mushrooms and the mushrooms that are eaten and all that type of stuff. And in this world, humans actually come from spaceships, and they come down to collect the mushrooms. So that was quite interesting. And like something from the afterword as well, the mangaka worked as a reporter at the time when this short story was initially published. So yeah, I didn't know that there was another tankobon from Kuniko Nagasaki, so that's pretty cool. So we'll move on to the next story here. Here is a story that's titled something like The Light Path Diagram on Your Toes. It's I don't know if it's translated correctly, but this is by Aoi Aki, and it's from the tankobon of the same name. It's a part 1 of a full story. So this is a BL story. And what we have is our character here, Iwai, is a major in fungi, and gets recruited as like a research assistant to this Professor Murota, who is pretty eccentric. I believe he had like tons of assistants in the past, but they weren't really up to his standard, I guess. But over time, they go mushroom hunting, and they begin to bond over their love for the fungi. But yeah, it ends on a sort of, well, it ends on a good note actually, because this is just a part 1 anyways of the full story. But this is what I mean when I say that this really has a lot of diversity and variety. You're getting stories from everyone, pretty much. Yeah, and then here is where it ends off. The start of new things for them. Okay, cool. Next one. We've got a story by Akiyama Ayuko titled Mountain Delicacies. So in terms of what they've done, I've also got a tankobon here. This one I haven't read yet, but if you want to take a look at the art, she is quite known for her stories always being related to nature in some way, and her art style is very, very intricate, very detailed. The story itself in this mushroom anthology is not in this tankobon, it's in another one titled Mushikera-sama, which I do not have. Oh, actually, it's right here. This one here. That's where it comes from. But yeah, Akiyama Ayuko has done stuff in Axe, and as you can see here, very, very detailed art. This time we've got on like some brownish paper. And in this story, it's following a boy who goes with his brother out into the night, because one of them needs to go to the toilet, I guess. They notice their father going out as well and kind of stalks him. And here they are, they get caught by their father. And when he catches them, he shows them that he's been going to like this mushroom, not really farm, but there's just this place with mushrooms growing everywhere. And he actually speaks to the mushroom. Let me see if I can find the panel where he does that. He talks to the mushroom somewhere. Here it is. Over here. And so he asks if he can eat them, and here I guess it's this magical place where the mushrooms are alive. And in the afterword, by Izawa, he talks about mushrooms as a sort of gateway to another world, a symbol of of being in between, and which you'll actually see in some other stories in this anthology as well. Mushrooms being this symbol of going from the ordinary to the extraordinary, and yeah, that's the tankobon that it comes out from. And Akiyama Ayuko had also debuted in Garo actually in 1992 December. So in the later stages of Garo, and yes, she was also in Axe as well. So I've yet to read the tankobon that I showed off before. I've only read short stories so far from her, from Axe issues, but I feel like I'd very much enjoy all of her works anyways, especially with how detailed all of her landscapes are and everything focusing on nature. Very, very nice. So let's move on to the next story. We have lots and lots of stories today. I think like 15 maybe. So yeah, gonna be a long one. This is a story titled Better Life of Mushrooms by Sakata Yasuko. Let me just adjust my light here. This is from a collection called Peter and Pistachio. And we have a main character here, this boy, his name is Michael. And here we've got like some glossier paper. You can see the shine on it. Michael discovers some mushrooms one day that can mysteriously call rain and also dry whatever is near it. So, for example, we have, let me show a scene here where, okay, so his father comes home, the mushrooms are in here, and yeah, water comes down and wets his clothes, but one day, or I guess like sometime later, he finds that the clothes that were wet were immediately dried. And so the mushrooms had to do something with that. The boy realizes, and we also now switch over to some yellow paper, which is an interesting choice. The father kind of is a laughing stock in this scene because he calls up like different, I guess he calls up like a mushroom, I don't know, agency, lab, mushroom expert, and gets made fun of because, you know, when you're describing a mushroom that can call forth rain and dry things like instantaneously, sounds pretty crazy. And here you go, here's the water coming out of the mushroom at the dad because he gets a bit angry. Actually no, it might have been, no, it wasn't that. It was a mailman with a fish tank, weirdly enough. But yeah, interesting one. Sakata Yasuko, never really heard of them before. Here's the collection of works where it came out from, the story there. That was pretty cool. Next we have a story by Matsumoto Leiji titled Delusional Night Train, and it's a part of his Otoko Oidon series, which apparently was the first series that sort of made Matsumoto famous. It's a continuing sort of gag series where we follow Oyama. He's a student who's been rejected from pretty much all universities and is currently living in an apartment, and he meets a girl named Nishio over here who has the signature style character design that Matsumoto usually has for his female characters. And pretty much what he does is he accidentally floods the second floor, which he lives in, and when coming back from work, finds all of these mushrooms here growing out of his closet, all the towels he used, I guess. And to be honest, this wasn't my favorite story. His gag stories aren't my thing, to be honest. But this was actually my first Matsumoto Leiji read. I haven't actually read or watched anything else from him yet. So it was an interesting experience. It's quite a long one too. finds out that the woman was moving out towards the end. But yeah, this is a continuing story. Okay. And here we go. This is the tankobon, what it looks like. And yeah, so it's not my favorite, but you got the variety there. Okay, so let's move on to the next story here. This one is titled Calvatia Nipponica, which is a type of mushroom that appears in this story. It's by Nikkuni Minami from a story that is titled Mushroom Kuchika. So essentially what we have are two roommates here. One of them here, this is Wanya. He works at a Russian goods store. And this is Yunta, who is a mushroom artist. So you can kind of tell with the mushroom hoodie that he's wearing. And yeah, so when Wanya goes out, he finds these mushrooms growing. They're very weird looking, giant white blobs. He goes to the store he works at, but yeah, just a little information about their background of how they met. But essentially they're bonded by their mutual love for mushrooms. And so what it is that when he gets home, they try to cook this weird mushroom. And they find out that it's not really that great. Not a great mushroom. But it's a wholesome story, a short one. They try to add more seasoning to it to make it taste nice, but they get bored, don't like the taste anymore, and they just use it for baseball practice. So a pretty wholesome read. But yeah, also this specific story in the afterword, they say that Izawa talks about how in the manga, because this is a series, each episode showcases like different mushrooms, and it was also supervised by a mycologist to make sure the descriptions of the mushrooms were accurate. So for example, we had it back here and earlier in the story here as well. So I guess if you're looking for pretty accurate mushroom depictions in the story that was supervised, then try out Mushroom Kuchika by Nikkuni Minami. Okay, so we're halfway through now. The next story we have from an Axe contributor, actually. This one is called Mushroom Travel from a book of the same name, Mushroom Travel, by Mimiyo Tomozawa, who does sort of Heta Uma-like works. In this one specifically, we have a couple here who is going out on an adventure of sorts, or a little journey. They go out and eat mushrooms, and this one was actually quite a weird one, but they sort of get lost. Here they are just panicking. The wife gets pretty angry, and all of a sudden a mouth pops up from the top of her head, and it starts reciting all of the human holes in the body. So it was like, oh, the human has like 7 holes or whatever. The mouth, no, say 7, 9 holes. The mouth, the ass, the blah blah blah. And I think it's because they were talking about how they wanted to eat these rings, which are holes, something like that. But the husband is trying to ignore it and trying to, not acknowledge the fact that her wife has a mouth growing out of her. But it might be a sort of illusion. They might be tripping or something. But yeah, this is another chapter here where Izawa talks about mushrooms being considered a gateway to another world. And this chapter was published in Garo in 1993. So I actually mainly know Tomozawa from Axe. I haven't read any Garo issues with her works yet, but pretty cool stuff. This is the tankobon there. Alright, continue on. This one, this is maybe the easiest to recognize. This is actually a chapter from Doro Hetoro, titled A Mountain Full of Food. So I did watch the first season of the anime, but I've given the manga so many tries, to be honest, but I didn't really enjoy it at all. But this part was in the anime. This is where, I don't remember the names of the characters, but they, our main two characters, they invade the main mushroom bad guys. I think his name's N. His castle, or they were looking for someone. You know, we've got like a severed head here. It's very convoluted, but the reason why this is included in the mushroom anthology is that N has a smoke ability where anything that inhales his smoke gets turned into a mushroom, and he can call out mushrooms as well. So we can see this happening here. Giant mushrooms start appearing. Everything is pretty chaotic, so it's a pretty powerful ability. But yeah, I found it really interesting that it included a lone chapter of Dorohedoro like that. So that was pretty cool. And it kind of ends on like its own note here, where people are just growing into mushrooms, and N is all happy with the special dog looking thing that does something special. I don't remember what it does. It's been a while since I watched Dorohedoro, but this was, I believe, in volume 3 of the series. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And it was glossy paper again. Now we go on to another chapter, which can be maybe for some people a bit harder to read, just because of the color. So we've got red print and yellow paper, which is very, very bright. This is called Mushroom Room by Azuma Hideo in the Curtain of Night short story collection. And this one here is following a man living in a room where he starts to notice that these weird looking faces are growing out of the corners of his room. So he, weirdly enough, starts assembling them. So they're pretty much just mushroom things. Once he starts assembling them, they begin to walk and all of that. He makes tons and tons of them until he finds a woman's head on them, assembles her, and she kind of turns into a monster, but is blown away into bits when the sunlight hits her. So yeah, no, it's still not focusing, but yeah, it's from a short story collection by Azuma from the 80s, which apparently was a period where he had like his mental health was in decline, which you can kind of see with the tone of story in this case. It's a completely silent manga, but I haven't read anything else from his stories in general, so yeah. But I think out of everything, the color choice was a bit too much. It's a bit too bright. It was a bit hard to read as well, but luckily there was no dialogue anyways. It was just a silent manga the whole way through. So let's move on to another chapter with very, very detailed art. This is called The Mushroom Spirit by Hanawa Kazuichi, known for his Erokuro works. And this is from a tankobon titled Suzakumon. So it's a short story collection. This one specifically was one of my favorites. It is also a bit of a gory one as well. So what we start off with is a little village here where the children and the adults, they are quite friendly with these mushroom spirits. And so the children often play with the mushrooms, and the adults like teach them about it. So this is only one village. So here is one of the mushroom spirits here. Only one village is kind of playing around with them, but another person from another village spots these mushroom spirits, and they think of them as like these bad spirits or like bad omens from the mountains. And so what they do is they actually go out and find the village. So they're blindfolding all the children here and like telling them of to eat this delicacy and whatever. It's actually a mushroom spirit that was captured and killed. So the children don't know that they're eating the mushroom spirit. In the meantime, they are raiding the village at which the mushroom spirits were at, and they begin to actually torture the adults in that village. But one of them manages to escape with the girl here, and the story ends there. So it's a very violent one. It's not as, crazy as Hanawa's other Eroguro works, but at least for this one, it still was quite a sad story. And this is a tankobon, I believe, that collects like Heian era styled stories. So for Hanawa, he started off with, the very, not really straightforward, but very Eroguro works, and then he moved over to more fantasy and supernatural stuff later. So he did have a change of subject matter during his career, and this is kind of one of them there. So great one. Now we move on to some pink paper. This is called Mushroom by Mio Makoto, and it's actually like a gag series that was serialized from 1972 to 1979, I think, in Ribbon. And this is by Mio Makoto. It's a story that follows these personified mushrooms. So if you want to tell them apart, they have the starting letters on their bodies. So we have all names, Rumu and Mashu. And yeah, well, this pretty much went through just a couple of different gag scenarios. So like bedwetting, they get a new cat, they eat some cake, all that type of stuff. But what was interesting was that in the afterword of this story, Izawa talks about how the mangaka was... They found out that the mangaka was active in the spiritual field. They had a blog about mystical experiences, and Izawa felt that the stories they had here represented a sort of yearning for the spiritual world. Again, because, mushrooms can be seen as that gateway to the extraordinary, to the supernatural. Sounds quite interesting. The gag stories themselves were okay. For me, some were good, some were alright, hit or miss. Here it is, Kinoko. That's what it looks like. And yeah, that was quite an interesting afterword to read as well, connecting it back to these works here. So that was an interesting one. Now we go into another story by Moto Hagio, called Come Into My Cellar. This one is actually a manga adaptation of Ray Bradbury's short stories. So I believe the author of Fahrenheit 451. This one is it came from a tankobon where she actually adapted 8 of Bradbury's stories. So this is one of them. If you've read the short story, then it's not all the same. There are some differences to the story, like the main character is different. Some of the other side characters are different as well. But essentially, it's a story about receiving mushrooms and finding out about the threat of an alien invasion through mushrooms and spores. So the differences between Hagio's version and the original is that the main character is Mani, a woman instead. The main character in the original was named Hugh, I believe. The mushrooms were grown in the story instead of being bought like the original. We've got her twin brothers, who weren't a thing in the original. And the ending was also a little bit different as well. So number one, I really love Moto Hagio's art style. I only have read one work by her, and that was her very densely science fiction story, Silver Triangle. I actually dropped that because it was one of those works that is so overly complicated and complex in its world that it was pretty hard to follow along after a certain point, which is why I kind of just stopped it. But I'm still I'd need to read way more Hagio. But when it comes to the ending of this, it ends on a sort of cliffhanger where we have the twin brothers showing her what had happened to the mushroom. So we don't actually know what happens. We do know what happens in the original story, but here in the manga adaptation, it's left kind of open-ended for you. And in the afterword, it talks about Moto Hagio and sci-fi in general, mentioning Silver Triangle as well, which is the one I read. But yeah, more shoujo mangaka in here. So far, since we're at the halfway point, we'll look back and I'll do a quick flip through of everything. And you can physically see the variety of stories. Every story has been pretty different. Genres have been different. Demographics have been different. So many different stories appearing. So I think we're a bit over halfway at this point. We now move into a story called, just called 645 by Ooba Kenya. And this one is kind of described as both like a mixture of manga and picture book. It's from a book called The Postman and the Night Country. And here what we have is like we have the picture and a dialogue at the bottom. And so every page is this 2-page spread with dialogue. It follows a girl and her dog going on an adventure, moving in between the ordinary and extraordinary. So the story itself, there's not really too much of a story. It's a lot of exploration. But I do love the art, and I can see what they mean by this being a combination of picture book and manga. So here's the girl and the dog. They find this, it's not a castle, it's like a, I don't know, they go into some underground place. Find a rainbow as well. And this is the book here. I'm actually quite interested in Ooba's works. I actually do want to pick up this book just to see what other stories they have in here, because number one, it's a very easy read in that it's just mainly pictures and just one line of dialogue each page. But I do love the art. It reminds me of another mangaka, but I can't place who actually. Maybe the shading sometimes reminds me of Made in Abyss. Maybe it was Made in Abyss, and I'm not too sure, but it does remind me of someone. I just don't remember who at the moment. But yeah, do want to pick up their book in the future. So yeah, we'll move on to the next one again. Marriage of the Mushroom Man by Murayama Kei. The tankobon just has the same title. This is a chapter 1, I believe. So in this one, we sort of have all these people are mushroom people. And we're starting off with a marriage between two of them, Ariella and Ariella. So it kind of goes into their first meeting. I think it was Ariella that was exploring things. You can see these little, I don't even know what they were, like alien type things. She stumbles upon Ariella over here and saves her when she falls. And that's how they meet. But everything seems pretty wholesome so far. I looked into the story more, and the afterword also talks about how after the manga actually goes into like the trials and tribulations that they have to go through, stuff involving sickness and betrayal, because I guess there's a ruling family, royal family, something of the sort. So it's not entirely wholesome. So that was pretty interesting. I'm not too sure how long it is. I think it's maybe only a couple of volumes long. So an interesting one, because everything here so far is pretty wholesome. But glad that he mentioned that in here. And now we move on to a story titled, there's actually 2 stories that has this title in this collection. This one's called Caterpillar Fungus. So I'm not going to say who it is if you can't read it, but you can probably notice from the art style straight away, it's a very distinct one. This is the story by Shirato Sanpei. So the caterpillar fungus, if you search up pictures of it, it's the one where like it kills its host and it grows out of the body of like insects and stuff. It's disgusting. But in this story, we have it's a chapter 2 of a Kashihon series by Shirato. This is the second chapter, so it follows the boy here named Genta. He wants to go to find the elixir of youth for his mum, I think. And he's told that it's a sort of mushroom. But we also have another character in the story that is a ninja. And I'm not sure what he's looking for exactly, but they are connected in a way that he also stumbles upon the mushroom. We also have a little fight scene between the ninja and another ninja. And after the battle, which we have here, so he wins. After the battle, he stumbles upon this mushroom growing out of the ground, and the story sort of ends off there. And this is, so in the afterword, this little section here looks at how when Shirato was a boy, he often went mushroom hunting, and you can sort of see that hobby of his continued because, the mushroom hunting chapter from Tsuge at the front was inspired by the time that Tsuge went with Shirato to mushroom hunt. So that was pretty cool as well. And this is what the Kashihon book looks like. Ishimitsu. That's what it's called. So yeah, cool one. So Shirato Sanpei, was not expecting him to be in here, but really cool that we've had him in here. It's actually the first chapter of, no, maybe the second chapter of Shirato's works that I've read. I'm still waiting for Komuiden to come out, but maybe I've read a couple of one-shots here and there from Shirato. And now we move on to the UFO mushroom invasion story, which I'm not going to go through entirely because I've already made a video on that. But what's really cool in this one is that we have all the different types of color pages. So this one is a very, it's such a good horror story. It's very straightforward, but at the same time, very engaging. We've got a little section here where it introduces mushroom mythology, folktales, stories with mushrooms in them, which is pretty cool from around the world. So I won't spoil it. You can cop that in English over here from the Smudge imprint, Living the Line, with a really cool essay by Ryan Holmberg as well, detailing also including other works by Shirakawa as well. Actually, no, I think I might have misremembered. It's not an essay by Holmberg. It's actually it's a translation of an essay by Uragawa Takeo. But there is a section by Holmberg where here it is, the best of Shirakawa Marina, where he goes through and talks about some of the other works that Marina has put out. So we'll continue through this, but yeah, the entire story in here. So lucky, because his works are pretty hard to come by, and if you find them, they're really expensive. So yeah, I will skip over the ending, just in case for spoilers. Alright, now we move on to the very last story of today, and this one is also called The Caterpillar Fungus. This is by Masumura Hiroshi from a book that is titled Aurora Hoso Kyoku. And so it's a story that follows, it's like a wider story with these two characters. This penguin is Wani, and this girl's Miyu. So in this part of the story, at least, they go to find this mushroom because Wani's father had disappeared. They had left Miyu like this box. When they open the box, they find a sort of map, and they follow like a couple of directions around, follow lots of hints. So this is what the father looks like because he's disappeared. They want to try and find him. And when they do stumble upon the destination, they find the caterpillar fungus a very exaggerated form of it because it's so big, but we find the father dead and the fungus growing out of him. So that they discover the owner, so they discover the father, because he had known that his death was approaching, he infused his desire into the fungus so that whoever eats it, which we get a flashback to when they learned that they had eaten the mushroom, whoever eats the mushroom can see the father in the form of a deva or a diva, which is like a god from Hinduism, I believe, which is an interesting one. So here he is, he appears in the form of the god and he can speak to them. So again, another story that utilizes mushrooms as being a gateway. This time, I guess not in different worlds, but it's more like life and death. But we've got this little ending panel here, which I'm quite interested to see what the rest of the story is like. I'm not too sure if it's like a episodic manga or if this is a part of a larger plot line. But this is the very first Masumura work that I've read. I know they've had stuff published in Garo. They've had tons of works. I think like one of their series is the Otoko series, which I haven't touched yet. But yeah, so that's the end. We've got over here like an afterword by Kotaro Izawa himself, talking about the background to this entire story, and we've got the complete table of contents here. So this was a very fun read for me. So much variety. So yeah, the initial edition was 2016. I have to check which edition this is, because 2018 was the revised edition, but we've got a little collage of all the different types of stories in here. So if you can recognize them, well, let's see if I can recognize them all. So this is the mushroom hunting Tsuge story. We've got UFO, mushroom invasion. We've had the Masumura story, Hideo Azuma, Moto Hagio, Matsumoto Leiji. You have, what else do we have? The Shirato Sanpei story, of course. Very cute, actually. More Matsumoto Leiji, Kinoko. A lot of different ones. So yeah, this one is relatively not that rare to find, I don't think. And the Obi just has all of the stories on the back as well. But yeah, it took a while for me to read through all this just because there were so many and each of them had an afterword that I read as well. But highly recommend this one if you love stories about mushrooms. It's a very, I guess, a niche subject, especially in manga. I mean, he did manage to, Izawa, the editor, he did manage to write his own complete collection of mushroom literature. So there's tons out there, I guess, but at least the manga, this is the only one I know. And I would kind of love to see more manga anthologies like this centered on niche topics or just very, like, you know, basic objects like mushrooms, right? Having a whole book, having stories that revolve around mushrooms, that sort of thing. I mean, in terms of my collection, the only thing that would be similar would be I've got 2 art books. They're not manga, but they're art books that focus on trains. So one is Train Painting by Yosuke Inoue. The other one is a collection of train drawings as well by Goto Yuka. So stuff like that is just pretty cool to have, and I think as far as for what I've seen, kind of on the rare side. So pick this up if you enjoyed any of these stories. And I mean, either way, I think people who read Japanese and wanted to read any Marina works for cheap would have picked this up too. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next one.